Coming at you live from New York, this is Spirit Matters, your regular daily Bhakti Center spiritual check-in. We are so glad that you are here. My name is Dal Gurunga, and I'm with the wonderful, illustrious, amazing, beautiful, inside and out, Achyuta Gopi Devi Dasi Prabhuji Mataji Hare Krishna. How are you, Achyuta?
I'm good. I got all the titles this morning, so we good.
Just a few of them. Just a few of them. Quick announcements. Go to India this fall. Achyuta Gopi is co-leading a trip. All the information's on bhakticenter.org. India pilgrimage. Exciting, exotic, beautiful, spiritually infused, holy places, temples, storytelling, kirtan, travel, beauty, everything you want. It's all there. Please check that out. And if you're not looking to go anywhere and you just want to stay home and continue the Zoom experience, I'm leading a 6-week wisdom course called Awakening the Self. If you like what you're hearing on Spirit Matters and you want to dive deeper into the foundational principles of spiritual philosophy as taught in the Vedic literatures, check out Awakening the Self. It's a donation-based class, so on a sliding scale according to your financial capacities. We'd love to have you with us. It starts end of this month. Please check it out. bhakticenter.org. Look for Awakening the Self. Those are things we want people to know about right now. Anything else, Achyuta?
That's it. I say let's do it. Let's
I
dive
say
in.
let's do it. Let's get into the real stuff. Let's get into the real stuff. Where are we? Do you want me to set the context and set the mood, or do you want to do that?
We've been talking about not putting Krishna on hold.
Don't
We
do
have
it.
been toying with the first few verses of chapter 4 of Bhagavad Gita, and we've been kind of perusing them, which is kind of my favorite way of doing things. You go over them and then you kind of go over them again because the next day there's some new realization that's kind of popped up.
We
Uh,
peruse
peruse leisurely.
leisurely.
And that's my favorite way. So I've been happy with this exploration, but we are getting into some really, really, really key verses, and I'm still excited to get there. We've been talking about how our love is enough, and also that we can always remember to treat God like a person that we'd be
Mm.
in a relationship with, just like any other person that we might be in a relationship with, and that is how easy and simple it can be to show up for the divine every day.
Totally.
Constant,
Yes.
but it
There's a
is
lot of key verses in chapter 4. We'll be talking that all of a sudden you'll make a point of like, yeah, that comes up later in chapter 4, and that comes up later in chapter 4. There's a lot there, and there's a lot there right in the beginning, like the first 10, 15 verses. And
love it.
you mentioned the idea of God being a person. And for those new to the show, or those who've been listening for a while and you didn't know, or even us who do know, we need reminders that Vedic culture, one of the beautiful things about Vedic philosophy and the philosophy of the Gita and the philosophy of the Srimad Bhagavatam and ancient books of wisdom from Vedic culture is this extraordinary inclusiveness, yeah, where it's not like when you have to, you know, which so there's the idea of approaching God in a variety of ways. God being seen as an all-pervading energy known as Brahman, the kind of experience you get when you're standing on the shore of the ocean, or you walk into nature, or you stare off into the night sky, and there's this feeling of like connectedness with all beings and all things, this all-pervading spirit that flows through everything, is real. And in Sanskrit, it's known as Brahman. And there's also God as the idea of the companion in the heart of each and every living being, in my heart, in your heart, in the heart of every animal, insect, tree, plant, every living being. And it's why a common greeting in Indian culture specifically is namaste, which literally means my respect unto you. The idea that there is God living in the heart of every living being. And then there's also the idea of God as a person, God as the ultimate reciprocator of love, God as the supreme best friend, God as my heart yearns for love, it yearns for connection, it yearns for to be seen, and for someone to receive my love and to offer me love. And that person who's able to do that to every living being to the fullest extent, because I ain't got love for everybody. I'm a limited, I got a limited tank, and I got my likes and I got my dislikes and I got my just my capacities and my limitations. So God as a person is that being, that person who has the capacity to reciprocate love to the fullest extent with every single person throughout the universe and beyond. And that's God as a person. And all are true. God is an all pervading energy, and God is in the heart of every living being, and God also can be a person. And when we read the Bhagavad Gita, we're looking at the idea of God as a person, giving advice to Arjuna, calling him his friend, calling him close to him. And where we've been the last few weeks is this idea of just remembering that. And you always do that so well, Lachuta. You always encourage that so beautifully, the idea of like just treating God as a person. And yesterday we were just talking about remembrance of just like it doesn't have to be fancy or elaborate or um even structured in any way all the time, but it can just be this remembrance. And I shared one of my favorite um expressions from Srila Prabhupada, who translated this version of the Gita that we're reading, that one day you'll feel the rays of the sun to be like the warm embrace of your lover, and just finding ways to remember Krishna. So I was just thinking that when you're mentioning God as a person and the beauty of that outlook and that theology and that philosophy, and the fourth chapter is very personal. Krishna is going to start talking about, since we're perusing, Krishna says in verse 9, one who knows the transcendental nature of my appearance and activities does not upon leaving the body take their birth again in this material world, but attains my eternal abode, or Arjuna, that understands that I'm not just an ordinary person, I'm the supreme person. And let's get to know each other.
Well, we didn't do 7 and 8, so we got to do 7 and 8.
Let's go back and do 7 and 8. We're perusing, by the way. This is
But
the
before
new
we do 7 and
spirit
8,
perusings.
right? Before we do 7 and 8, I actually wound up having that conversation with Nandi yesterday. Nandi is 12, in case the new listeners out there don't know.
Her daughter.
She also happens to be my mini me, who's not so mini anymore. She's like half an inch taller than me now.
Yeah.
So she's no longer mini. She is the big mini me.
What's the opposite of mini? Supersized?
Yeah, she is now my partial expansion. but so I was talking to her because I was teaching her about analogies. She's homeschooled, and Maxi-me almost sounds like she's a skirt or a sanitary napkin.
Maxi, somebody put in the chat Maxi-me as opposed to mini-me. Maxi-me. Yeah, sounds like a subsidiary of TJ Maxx.
So I was teaching about analogies, and I remember when I was in college and I was getting an English degree, and everybody always asked me, "Or are you going to be a teacher?" And my answer was never, unless my one caveat was if I could teach in a Vedic school, because drawing parallels between English and teaching Vedic philosophy at the same time was the only way I could really feel like teaching all of this. And so we were talking about analogies. And she likes analogies as long as she doesn't have to do the work to think up one of them. And that's exactly what they were asking her to do yesterday. They're like, think of an analogy of your own. She's like, I don't know any analogies. It's like, you know so many analogies. They only talk about Krishna in analogies. Like, that's the only way we've been able to understand Krishna at all. You know, it's the spirit soul is to the supreme person as a drop of water is to the ocean, or the supreme soul within the heart is what the sun is to the sunshine. And so I was like, so you know about analogies, you know this. And finally she had to like concede that, all right, fine. And that is one wonderful thing about raising kids with Srila Prabhupada philosophy. It makes us all look really, really intelligent. It gives us a vocabulary that people don't normally use. You know, it's like, who's going to talk about a partial expansion or a progenitor, or like it's like all of these words that no one is really using.
You're a progenitor. You should tell you, like, Nani, I'm your progenitor.
All right.
I progeninated you.
And there goes my degree. But yeah, so I mean, you know, having Srila Prabhupada as this base gives such a beautiful foundation. And I think that it is always, when you were talking about that one simile that he uses, that you'll feel the sun as the warm embrace of your lover. And I'm thinking, I'm like, okay, I see you, 70-year-old Bengali gentleman, with the romantic poetry. I see you. And every so often we'll see Srila Prabhupada. It's like these inner thoughts and realizations really emerge, because a lot of the time it can be very scientific and very much like, this is the science of self-realization. And then sometimes he gives such beautiful, really heart tugging analogies that remind me that bhakti is supposed to be beyond this scientific thought process. Yes, it is there, and then it transcends that and it goes. Helen Keller said the greatest things in life cannot be seen with the eyes or even felt, but they must be felt within the heart, right? They can't be
Mm,
seen or heard, but they must be felt within the heart. And I feel like that's bhakti. We start off trying to conceive of it with all of our senses, and then one day it transcends all of that, and you
mm,
cannot conceive of it with anything more than the heart. And so I
mm,
feel like this is where Krishna is going. He's starting to dive deeper. Okay, we've got the surface of what's going on here, but now we're really going to get deep into Krishna's heart, and we get deeper and deeper into Krishna's heart. And then, we get to ninth chapter, 10th chapter, 11th chapter, 12th
mm,
chapter. Krishna is going to go deeper and deeper into now what makes him tick, what draws him out, what makes him as obsessed with us as he wants us
mm.
to be with him.
Yeah. So beautiful. And I think that there's a lot popping up in my mind. I'm looking up another verse in the Gita. Um, that's not the verse I was looking for. There's another verse in the 18th chapter. There's many verses throughout the Gita where Krishna explains exactly what you're saying, that at a certain point, um, it really is, yeah. There's several verses. In the 11th chapter, Krishna says that, my dear Arjuna, only by undivided devotional service can I be understood as I am, standing before you, and can thus be seen directly. Only in this way can you enter into the mysteries of my understanding. And then in chapter 18, he says the same thing very similarly. He says, one can understand me as I am, as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, only by devotional service. And when one is in full conscious of me by such devotion, they can enter into the kingdom of God, or the spiritual. The word enters, vishate, that he enters into that supreme abode, that supreme understanding. And even in chapter 4, as I just read, Krishna's talking about one who knows the transcendental nature of my appearance and activities, like me as a person. And Krishna says early, we've been reading this verse a lot this week, about Krishna describing transcendental science, the science of yoga. And I'm saying that I'm telling this to you because you're my devotee as well as my friend. And that, when you look at, Vedic literatures have such deep, profound philosophy. I mean, we're in chapter 4 already. Just in chapter 2 and 3, there's like expansive, extensive philosophical detail about the nature of life, about the eternal nature of the soul, what's real and what's unreal, that which is eternal and that which is temporary, and that which is lasting, and all the identities that we think we are, and the nature of the soul, and the nature of life beyond this life, and the nature of desire, and the nature of that when I think I want something, it's not actually me wanting something, it's my body wanting something, it's my stomach wanting something, it's my lower chakras, or my sexual urges wanting something, it's my ego wanting something, and I've just become a slave to that. And like, how to remove myself through that, and develop into higher meditations, and developing a higher taste. And you can't give up a lower thing unless you have a taste for a higher thing, and like the soul is destined for higher things. And then how to use our natures in this world in a spiritual way through a mood of sacrifice and service, like this extensive spiritual philosophy. And then at a certain point, it's like, at a certain point, logic and philosophy will take you no further. And it's like, you have to now enter into, I love that quote you brought from Helen Keller, of like, there are certain things you can't see with the eyes or hear with the ears, but must be felt with the heart. And at a certain point, when Krishna talks about, like we talked about these layers of understanding God, like God as an energy, God as a companion of the heart, and then God as a person. When it gets to understanding God as a person, that's something that you have to, there's the surrender in the heart. And it's why these philosophical treatises in Vedic literatures are also written in, ultimately the highest truth is poetry. Bhagavad Gita, it's the song of God. It's written in a poetic meter. The Srimad Bhagavatam is a long poem. The Mahabharata is even considered an epic poem. Like it's written in meter. And so and some of the most advanced saints in the Bhakti tradition, their most advanced literatures are written according to dramatic theory. They write dramas, they write plays to convey very deep spiritual sentiments. And so it is so absolutely true that we're being called, that bhakti is a calling of the heart, and that there's a certain softening, that there's a certain need to use very sharp intellectual, like like exercise in order to understand like philosophical bases. But at the same time, it's the softness of heart that's going to take us the furthest, of understanding Krishna through devotion. That's bhakti yoga. It's connecting through devotion. It's through the level of the heart, because ultimately Krishna wants us to, um, it's less about understanding and more about loving. And there's some things that we don't have to understand somebody completely to love them. And Krishna says later in the Gita, I think it's in the 7th chapter, that like I know everybody in full, but there's nobody who knows me in full, because I'm unlimited, I'm expansive. And so Krishna's not asking us to know him in full, but he's asking us to love him fully. And that love opens up a greater portal for knowing.
Yeah.
And so I appreciate you sharing that, because poetry, um, artistic expression in bhakti is so powerful, because it's a way that we connect with Krishna, with God as a person, through love.
It's one of my favorites. And
You're
even
really good at it.
thank you. And even looking at the anthologies of previous Vaishnava poets, even Shankaracharya. Shankaracharya was a great, incredible. Adi Shankaracharya was one of the biggest philosophers of Vedic historical India. Comes and presents the most scientific knowledge. And in many, many times, outwardly, he would discuss the formless nature of the Supreme.
Mm.
But as he got toward the end of his life, he would go into temples, and there's one he writes, he starts spouting off 100 verses of poetry about the deity form of Krishna. He goes through his life presenting all of this stringent philosophy, but at the end of his life, he leaves off with Bhaja Govindam, Bhaja Govinda, just worship Govinda, just experience Govinda. And it always reminds me that bhakti, you can try to intellectualize it and conceptualize it, and then at a certain point we just have to experience it. We have to
Mm.
allow ourselves to have the experience. And to always bring it back to Bhagavad Gita, a wonderful thing uh, is that, okay, I'll read the 2 verses, then I'll tell the wonderful thing. So 7 and 8, which are key verses, really well known. Whenever and wherever there is a decline in religious practice, O descendant of Bharat, and a predominant rise of irreligion, at that time I descend myself, to deliver the pious and to annihilate the miscreants, as well as to reestablish the principles of religion. I myself appear, millennium after millennium. I kind of like this whenever and wherever. And I've spent some time fixating on that whenever and wherever, because it doesn't just mean whenever and wherever, okay, the whole earth is in trouble, and so that warrants the Supreme Person to appear. Whenever and wherever includes our lives every day. Whenever and wherever we are in a deep need, the Supreme Person will appear in our lives.
Mm.
Sometimes it's in a way that we can see tangibly. Sometimes it's only in a way that we can experience with the heart. But whenever and wherever, there is an incredible promise. And the wonderful thing is, Krishna keeps urging Arjuna to fight, and Arjuna doesn't really want to go through this entire battle. Spoiler alert, he does.
Mhm.
And Krishna spends 18 days at night after the battle. He's pacing. He can't sleep because he's worried about making sure his devotee prospers. We think, okay, he spoke Bhagavad Gita, he gave the knowledge, and that's that. There's still such a grand history that happens around this. So we might feel like, oh, God is calling me to do this thing and fight this battle and live this life and do all this stuff. And does God even care? Now that God's told me to surrender, fine, I'm going to surrender. Now what? As we surrender, the Supreme Person doesn't think about anything but us. How incredible that it's not just, oh, surrender to me, and then he just leaves you alone and does his own thing. He cannot do anything else out of anxiety. The Supreme Person feels anxiety, yes, for us. Now that he said, rest on me, put everything on me, place all your hopes and dreams on me. Now he actually takes that seriously. And that to me is the most wonderful thing. It's that we read Bhagavad Gita and it can be read in a vacuum, but it doesn't stop there. It
Yeah.
doesn't stop when Arjuna sees a universal form. It doesn't even stop after that. It doesn't stop after the speaking of this Bhagavad Gita. It doesn't even stop after surrender. Krishna's still going to make the rest of the story happen in the best way for all of us.
Mm. Such a beautiful, beautiful reflection. Thank you for sharing that. And I was thinking how that what we do in bhakti, like our practices are really, like love is something that you can't force yourself to feel and you can't force someone else to feel, right? And so what are we doing when we're practicing bhakti? We are putting ourselves in an environment that is favorable for love awakening. You know, we go into a kirtan, we go and do service at the altar, we go and we're reading some things, we're listening to the podcast, like whatever it is that we're doing. Like I'm trying to put myself in an environment that is favorable for me to have that loving experience, awakened in the heart. And there was once I heard an explanation, somebody talking about falling in love with the divine, very much the way that we may fall in love with people in this world. Like somebody may think, of all the things that they need to do before they get married or enter into a long-term relationship. Like we got to be financially stable and we got to make sure that, I get all my debts paid off, and I got to make sure that, that they got to have this and that. And I got to work through this issue. And like all of these like big list of things that we all got to do. And then you just meet somebody, and all of those questions and things, what about this and what about that? They don't go away. They just get a lot smaller, and you carry them with you forward, and you trust that we'll work that out. I still don't know how we're going to work out this and that, but we're going to work it out. And I think the same thing happens when we come into spiritual life. You got all these questions about what about, this and that. And there's scientific questions, philosophical questions, and like history questions and different things. And it's like, but then you have an experience, like something touches your heart, you feel something, you're in a kirtan and something just moves you, you're staring at the deities in the altar and something just pulls at you, you're reading something and it just pops out at you. And are you just moving through your day and you just, something flows through and you're just like, I don't know what that was, but I want to move closer. And like all of those questions that we have, the philosophical, mental, psychological, historical, questions that come out of it, they don't necessarily go away. They become less important because now I feel like there's just something real that I came in contact with that doesn't have an explanation beyond that. And so I think that what we're trying to do as much as possible is put ourselves in environments where we can have those types of experiences, which is where faith comes from. The heart opens up and we're drawn forward. And so thank you everybody for being here. And I pray that we can have those experiences more and more. And for today, we hit our time crunch. So we're going to turn it over to Kimberly, who's going to wrap things up for us. If you'd like to take notes or have some takeaways, tune in, turn up your volume. Kimberly's going to share some takeaways. We're going to share some closing words. We're going to send us all on our way to go have an experience with God somewhere. Oh, but it's because you came in and came back out. Try now, Kimberly.
Okay, thank you. Bhakti is a calling of the heart because the best and most beautiful things are felt in the heart. The highest truth is poetry. We don't have to know Krishna fully to love him fully. And whenever and wherever there's a deep need, there's an incredible promise the Supreme Person will enter into our lives. Thank you.
Thank you. Closing word, Achyuta.
I'm gonna go write some poetry.
Achyuta has an entire book of poetry.
I do.
Prema Mala. Where can we find that book?
It's on Amazon. I should just bring copies to the Bhakti Center to put them in the gift shop.
You should.
I should.
Prema Mala. Look up Prema, Prema, space Mala. Prema Mala by Achyuta Gopi. She has an entire book of devotional poetry. It's beautiful. It's moving. Check it out.
Compiling another one.
Some people, Raga Bhakti's already got it. Baldevi's got it. Kimberly's got it. We are selling snow cones to Eskimos. They've already got some.
But the other listeners.
People out there. Yeah, more than just the three of them. And Sydney, who also has it. Thank you. I appreciate that. Beautiful. And I'm taking away just paying attention to the environments that I put myself into. You know, the environments I put myself, are they conducive to awakening love in my heart? Are they contracting the lotus of my heart in a way that's pulling me further away? And so that's my little takeaway. Vidya's asking, is it possible to get the book in India? I think
it is worldwide on Amazon.
Worldwide. We are in a globally connected society. So
worldwide.
I don't know what the shipping would be, but it's there.
No, because it has Amazon sections, so it should be the shipping is. And
got it. Amazon's taken over the world, so we got you covered.
I also adjusted the price in rupees so that it would be.
Oh, that's very thoughtful of you. Okay, everybody. Thank you all so much. Thanks for being here. We love you guys. Please take care. Please be well. If you'd like to get on our live Zoom room, or we have a WhatsApp group that has updates on when we have live episodes, if anything changes, or you just want to be in touch with us, spiritmatters@bhakticenter.org. Write to us, and we're happy to bring you into the family more so. Please take care. Please be well. Make sure go write us a 5-star review, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and wherever you listen to podcasts, and wherever you don't listen to podcasts. Helps us out a lot. We really appreciate it. Take care, everybody. Be well. Bye-bye.